Welcome to Implicating the Real. My name is Michael. I'm joined by my good friends Joe and Liana. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Liana, good to see you. How are you?
Great.
Today we're continuing chapter 12. I believe we're on session 551 in Seth Speaks. And just paging back to see reincarnational relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one quote right at the end of the previous session that I wanted to read. I don't know if we said this last time, but that was when the idea of overpopulation and Seth got into the two problems that our civilization faces of war and overpopulation. The very last paragraph is, "The crisis is a kind of therapy, however. It is a teaching method that you have set up for yourselves because you need it. And you need it now, before your species embarks upon journeys to other physical realities. You must learn your lessons now in your own backyard before you travel to other worlds. So you have brought this upon yourself for that purpose, and you will learn." And it's later in this book that he's talking about I think he said 3 previous civilizations that were similar to us, one of them being the Lumanians.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like they all kind of made themselves extinct.
Yeah, but I think the Lumanians made themselves extinct not because of overpopulation, just because of their attitudes.
For their own different reasons, yeah. And just that last sentence, and you will learn. It doesn't necessarily imply, you will learn in time.
Yeah, it's got some fire and brimstone in it.
Yeah.
You're going to learn.
Or it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, get it right in physical reality. It's almost like the understanding, and I think the next session is going to reiterate this, but the understanding is kind of the important thing. But I don't know.
I've just been interacting with too much grim dark media lately.
Yeah.
Or in my mind, I'm thinking of the possibility where we don't learn our lesson and we destroy the world, but we still go to other realities and we're just a plague of locusts in every other reality.
Well, I think that's what he's implying here. And you need to know it now before your species embarks upon journeys to other physical realities.
Yeah, man, Seth says he's a teacher. He's actually scared. He's like, the people from this physical reality are about to flood into all these other realities once they destroy theirs.
The way I look at it is it's it's power, we have to develop responsibility before we're given more power. And maybe we've touched on this, but we have our own examples of this, you have to be 16 and you have to learn these things before you can drive a car,
Mm-hmm.
most anything that actually has some sort of power, especially for physical damage.
Yeah, it's the Spider-Man thing.
What's the Spider-Man thing?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, that's the main tagline, right? Yeah, that's an interesting concept, but we'll see how we do. Joe's already kind of embracing the end times here.
Oh, we're full prepper mode.
Did we touch on this before?
I don't know if we've touched on the prepper stuff.
I mean, we're in the next, hopefully final Trump administration.
Yeah, no elections ever again. That's what I've been told, is that we don't ever have to worry about
He's just
them.
gonna crown one of his sons when he's older. And anyways, but you got some solar panels, and
I did get some solar panels recently. I'm excited to get them going.
Sorry, I hope that's okay to share.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Listener, the end is coming quicker than you expect. Like a thief in the night is how they say.
Yeah, I think if you feel like you understand certain things, but the rest of the world doesn't, that's a tricky spot.
The problem is when you've been doing it for over half a decade and you just get proven right and you don't want to be proven right, but it keeps happening. Then you start getting suspicious,
Yeah. Well, maybe Seth will give us the secret.
Yeah. Yeah, we just got to get to the highest dimension and just get out of here.
Yeah, didn't we talk about that last time, because, the bugs or the other species they're leaving us. Mm-hmm. We're not leaving them.
Yeah, no, I'm about to translate into a different reality construct that has all the bugs in it, and it's just going to be me and the bugs, and we're going to be laughing.
Switch probabilities.
We're going to be pointing at this reality and laughing.
Some reality has like extra bugs because all the ones that left this reality. Then you're going to be like swatting. You'd be like, God damn it, why did I come here?
Yeah. The only bugs that decided not to leave were the mosquitoes, I feel like, because we still have all of them in Minnesota.
Man, we screwed that up.
Yeah.
All right, should we get into the next session here?
Yeah.
I got something right off the bat, or unless you guys want to take it. In each life, you are meant to check the exterior environment in order to learn your inner condition. The outer is a reflection of the inner. You are meant to understand the nature of your inner self and to manifest it outward. As this is done, the exterior circumstances should change for the better as the inner self becomes more aware of its own nature and capabilities. Theoretically, then, in each life, you would become stronger, healthier, wealthier, and wiser, but it does not work this way for many reasons. Concerning that last part, I just kind of wrote in the margins here, the way I was trying to conceptualize this, that, you don't necessarily progress in this linear fashion, is that what I came up with is greater understanding understands that more does not necessarily create greater understanding, if that makes any sense. So like as your understanding develops and you have this greater ability to create a better environment for you, that understanding also understands that, just nailing it in physical life doesn't necessarily provide you a highly developmental existence. Like if you're trying to like progress developmentally, if you're here just for that, it understands that it has to hold back in certain areas maybe to create some of those lessons. Does that make sense?
I think so. I like the next sentence because I feel like it touches on that. As mentioned earlier, many personalities adopt different kinds of experiences, focusing upon development in certain specific areas and ignoring others perhaps for a series of lives.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of the things I keep mentioning. So like if you're playing implicating the real drinking game, get ready. But that old Jewish proverb, this is a way I've just like understand what existence is, but like it's kind of maybe like a koan type question, like what's the one thing in all knowing, all present, what was the other all powerful being doesn't have? And the answer is like limitation. But part of all this experience is like a self-limiting to put you in a different context. And from that, it's not just like a static forgetting and remembering of this like like infinity. It's actually, as Seth points out, and that's where I get this from, you actually, that limitation has a different experience and grows from it. And I think that's kind of what he's pointing to. Like, that's why, each successive life, it's not necessarily stronger, healthier, wealthier, and wiser,
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to think of it is it's kind of like regular school, where in theory, if you are learning stuff in each grade, you would think that by the time you get from kindergarten to senior year that you would just absolutely crush it. But like the topics you study get increasingly, I wouldn't say harder, it just builds, it's just stuff you don't know yet.
There's always more to know. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just because you passed fractions in third grade doesn't mean that you're going to know like physical chemistry by sophomore year in
That's a good
college.
point. Yeah. You just put more on your plate.
Yeah. And there's so many things, and that's just like our K through college system. There's so many more things to learn in like the greater reality of things than just 10 or so subject matters.
But that brings up a good point of like reflecting this sort of attitude back on our school system is like, how much do we teach our children to learn how to learn? Because that's the one thing that would build. If you were learning how to learn, you would for sure be better at it as a senior than a kindergartner.
It's the great question that our president, George W. Bush asked, right? Is our children learning?
I missed that one. That's funny.
Yeah. No, but it's a good point, right? Like the skill of learning is itself a skill that you need to like functionally learn. And it's sort of like, it's one of those like adaptive skills that's like different than like a knowledge-based skill. It's like a lot more applicable in a lot of other circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So it's like sort of hard to get at it at like a certain ages, right? Because it's sort of an attitudinal thing.
Yeah, I think I'm sure we've said this before, but the easiest way in is always just to find what the student is interested in learning.
Yeah.
But I guess there's also something to be said for an ability to learn something you just find boring.
Well, there's like a self-confidence that's required, right? Like you need to be able to like take responsibility upon yourself. So it is really like an ethics, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Got any more on that first part there?
I just wonder what this part is supposed to mean in that context where it says the outer is a reflection of the inner. Like I expected that to go one way, and then Seth immediately goes to the qualifying of like, well, but not actually though. Like the outer is a reflection of the inner, except that it's not, right?
What do you mean? Where does he say except that it's not?
You're saying that therefore you would assume that it would get better and better.
Right. Yeah. Where like apparently the outer is not a reflection of the inner.
I think it still is, but we shouldn't make that assumption that it just builds in that way.
Because I had thought that earlier, and maybe I'm just not remembering this chapter very well, but I had thought there was parts earlier in the chapter where Seth basically implies like, yeah, you do just kind of get like stronger and more handsome and healthier, like the more lives you live, you know?
It's an interesting question because I think there's a lot to parse out there. I mean, I think of like Seth's own last incarnation of Frank Withers and Frank Watts.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that much about him, but he calls him a fathead and doesn't seem to be that interested in him.
Right.
He did say that your abilities develop more and more, and so whatever abilities you have now, you've earned in other lives.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily contradictory because when you're in college, you do know more than you did when you were a first grader. But like I said, the classes scale up. So the difficulty of the classes you're taking would analogously be the exterior environment. It's still challenging, but you yourself are better, just facing different challenges.
I think for me, like part of the ambiguity is how you identify. And he's like saying you, like, is that you, the outer ego, or because he'll use those terms differently. Sometimes he's trying to get you to identify with your larger self. Because I think if we're going to take like Frank Watts, for example, if the exterior environment is the reflection, I'm assuming, of Frank Watts and not like the larger Seth entity behind it, that implies that this is kind of the outer ego you in this sense.
Yeah.
He does repeat this sort of concept over and over throughout the books, I think.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, the accepted like higher level of challenge thing.
And,
Yes.
you know, like I understand it, or just the idea that like our exterior environment is a reflection, it's a mirror. And if nothing else, I feel like I understand it, but not fully. But it always gets me to like, you know, look at the world differently, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're just like, and we've talked about this before, but especially when something bad happens, like we had little variations on the same question. I feel like I said like, why did I choose this? And what did you say? How did I choose this? Or how did I get here?
Yeah, how did I mess this up?
Yeah. But it's just that sort of thing is like looking at the world, like sometimes the world faces you to ask those questions, right? Like, how the fuck did this happen?
Yeah.
Usually when something bad happens.
Where is my beautiful wife? Where is my fancy car?
Yeah. Was that Talking Heads?
Talking Heads.
Yeah. We're out of the time. What do we got? Anything coming up?
We get into, because we're going to talk about this in the next chapter too, right? Is like we start talking about this idea of like you take on both being male and female like sex roles, like your different like reincarnations, and that this is like really important that you do so.
Yeah, I mean, it seems kind of obviously important, and even in our society, but it gets pretty deep into it in the next chapter, and we'll get there.
Right. Yeah.
But he mentions that there must be experiences in motherhood and fatherhood.
It says abilities cannot be developed following a one-sex line. Oh, wait, that's right before that.
Yep. I mean, I have no qualms with that, but yeah, it's interesting. anytime there's like some rules, I'm like, oh, what are the rules?
Well, and we got into this one too last time too, because like the way Seth starts describing it seems really weirdly counterintuitive to how we thought a lot of the time stuff worked. Because Seth starts talking of like in this chapter and in chapter 13 that we're gonna get to about like the sequence in which you do those lives matters a lot. And like if you do a bunch of like the same sex lives in a row versus if you go back and forth, right? Like it makes a difference to like how you experience them, presumably.
Yeah. So he kind of implies that in a lot of areas, but like if you're too obsessed with one thing, it can be kind of detrimental.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same goes with, just taking a bunch of male lives or female lives in a row. I got something after that highlighted here.
Yeah, I'll just make a note for the listener for once we get to the later stuff. Right now, Seth is using the word sex. So I'm taking that to mean like biological sex, right? And then like later on, we'll get to elaborate on whether we think that means gender or not. So just like put a pin in that one, listener. I know you're probably thinking it. We'll get there.
Yeah, this hits a little differently today than when it was written in 1970, probably. When you get to the point that you realize you are forming your day-to-day existence and the life that you know, then you can begin to alter your own mental and psychic patterns and therefore change your daily environment. This realization, however, should go hand in hand with a deep intuitional knowledge of the capabilities of the inner self. These two factors together can release you from any difficulties that have arisen in past lives. The entire structure of your existence will begin to change with these realizations, and an acceleration of spiritual and psychic growth will develop. I had some anxiety when I was like a very young child of like, oh, I'm never going to learn to whistle. I'm never going to learn to blow a bubble or ride bike without training wheels. And then it just happens. And like, you still don't, I don't know. I don't think I still understand like just how when Seth talks about, I don't know if it's in this book, but like a child learning to walk, like just how we take for granted, like there's so much actually going on from that he can perceive that we don't, just to do that. But this idea that, this development path that we're on, once we get these two things kind of figured out, there's this acceleration. So it's like suddenly you do know how to walk spiritually. You accelerate spiritual and psychic growth and development. That's what I was pulling out of this one. And then right after that, this is a little line that relates to karma. I think we touched on it last time. There's an inner logic to your current relationships, attitudes, and experiences. If in one life, for example, you hated women, you may very well be a woman in the next life.
Yeah, to follow up on that, I have this one on the bottom of 181. It says, you cannot say the poor are poor simply because they choose poverty, and therefore there is no need for me to help them. This attitude can easily draw poverty to you in the next experience.
Yeah.
To me, that just seemed like so much of one of those, like, you read it in, like a really old, like, book on, like, like Proverbs or whatever. It's, like, almost fortune cookie-esque,
Yeah.
But, like, yes, denying the poor money will lead to you being poor in your next life. So don't do it.
Well, I will note here, he doesn't say denying the money. And I wrote down here because I think since coming across Seth, I've maybe briefly held this attitude or like, oh, they chose this. They're dealing with this.
Right.
It's fine if I just let them deal with this.
Right.
But I think in the previous paragraph, he's talking about understanding. And I was just thinking about that, like helping the poor in this sense is maybe to help them understand, which is not as easy as giving them money, I think, in a lot of ways.
I want to read these two lines after what you read, Michael. It says, about women, only in this way, you see, would you be able to relate to the experience of womanhood, and then as a woman, face those attitudes that you yourself had against women in the past. If you had no sympathy for the sick, you may then be born with a serious disease again, now self-chosen, and find yourself encountering those attitudes that were once your own. I think it's like, if you really understood, if you didn't have such like a callous attitude towards the poor, you'd think, well, yeah, they do create their reality, but I know how difficult that is to like butt up against their beliefs and the physical reality reflecting your inner self to the exterior. So, you're not just going to be like, yeah, screw them. Like, they chose this. It's a little more complicated than that.
Because, like, maybe the lesson they have to learn in that lifetime is, like, how to rely on other people.
Yeah, right. Or maybe in other lives, they were, like, consistently exuberantly wealthy, and they, like Seth's life, where he was that poor single mother of 12 children, to learn, like, how wonderful the simple things were. You can't just write off a single person like that.
Did we read that yet? I don't think we have.
I think
We brought it up.
We've talked about it a couple times.
Yeah.
I want to say there's a particular term you use that I found. You want to say like everything had like an edge to it, or like the stakes were so much higher that like life had this beautiful contrast. Like, do I have a scrap of bread or do I not? And like so much hinged on that. Like he was really pointing to the beauty of like living that sort of existence, even though, from our point of view, it was a lot of suffering, probably.
That's the great thing about memory, though, is that you don't remember the suffering. You just remember the emotional, like, highs.
Well, I think we're going to get into more of that too, but like I feel like we intuitively understand the value of this sort of understanding that we're gathering from life, in the way that we've brought this up several times, but like you're in like a painful situation, but once you get out of it, most people are like, I wouldn't change that. Like there's like an implied value that you've gotten from that you don't want to give up, I'm not saying everyone in all situations has this attitude, but
yeah, I tend to see that as like an error in reasoning more than anything. Like I think that's just like a psychological bias thing, because the like I guess you could call it like an ownership bias, where it's like once you intuit something as like part of your life history, you wouldn't get rid of it no matter what it is, And like I think people tend to do it in situations where you're like, that's just like not rational.
But isn't it rational to like, even thinking that life is like this series of causal happenings, like the butterfly effect? Like that's, a lot of people think that way, and even with that reasoning, they have a rational conclusion. They're like, oh, I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I feel like there's like some sort of like way of phrasing the question to get it like a little bit better, so that you can like get people to actually think about it like objectively. Because like it's not just like would you get rid of that situation? It's like, wouldn't you have preferred if this had happened in that situation? Like, wouldn't you have preferred if like, oh, your family like disowned you and like you had to go live on your own since you were 17? Wouldn't you have preferred if you had more money to do that?
This gets to like a personal philosophical existential question that I kind of had before I even like got into like formally studying anything. Is pain necessary for me to learn these things? And it was a question that like I just couldn't answer and I had to carry with me 3 years.
Yeah.
But where I ended up landing is that it's not. But like, in order for me to get the same understanding without like, say, this specific hard lesson that was very painful, I would have had to be very aware of like the little signs. Like if I was more tuned to like learning and developing, I could have picked up this lesson without having this hard life lesson that kind of smacked me in the face.
Yeah, I think pain puts things in boldface, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like you can hit upon the truth, but you might on a day-to-day basis not live your life according to the lesson that you learned. All right? Like it's very easy to learn a lesson and then become sort of a hypocrite just in the course of living your life because you don't think about it all the time. But like if you have a very painful experience, that just like leaves a much more like clear psychological mark for good and bad, right? Like a lot of it is for the bad, right? Like people can't get over some of these things mentally. But like if you do learn a lesson in that experience, that lesson sticks with you because your mind can't escape the past. It is stuck in that it's traumatic experience.
Deeply stamped upon you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to your question, like, how did I fuck this up?
Right.
And like, I feel like that specific framing kind of gets you to the point where you can see like, oh, I saw this before and I ignored it. And I saw this before and I ignored it. It's not, I don't think life is necessarily, we have to be like always on the lookout for these like secret meanings and put them together. Otherwise, we're just gonna like have this horrible suffering. But like, ultimately, I do want life to give me the hard lesson if I need it. I think that's kind of the brave choice in choosing this sort of existence. If we're taking this like outside of physical reality attitude seriously, like that we're just I get from like reading stuff like this, that like, it's the physical line of development isn't necessarily thought of as like gentle and easy necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, we might just have different like metaphysical conceptions of like where the difficulty comes from.
Yeah, I mean, mine is already heavily influenced by this to the point where I can't even like separate it anymore.
Right.
Maybe this relates. The perfectly happy life, for example, on the surface may appear splendid, but it may also be basically shallow and do little to develop the personality. The truly happy existence, however, is a deeply satisfying one that would include spontaneous wisdom and spiritual joy. I'm not saying, in other words, that suffering necessarily leads to spiritual fulfillment, nor that all illness is accepted or chosen for such a purpose, for this is not the case.
I do think this is like a really useful like qualification, because like that's the concern I've had up until this point with a lot of this sort of like you choose your own difficulty thing, is like you can see where it could lead into a sort of psychological callousness towards people. So it's like very helpful for Seth to point out like this is not always the case. Like this is not always the thing that this person is like here to do. This could just be just a thing that's happening to them,
The callousness, like the aforementioned, like helping the poor thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like these poor people chose to be poor. Oh, I can beat up this poor guy because he chose for me to beat him up. He's poor. Like
that's the next level.
Right. Oh, if you wanted to be able to beat me in a fight, maybe you should have chose to incarnate as a man instead of a woman. That kind of thing.
I guess I'm just now imagining a psychopath using like the Seth material to his own. Yeah.
Because there's no good and evil, right? It's all just growth. It's all just a lesson you got to learn.
There is evil to the extent that you create it.
Yeah.
That's the part you can't forget. Any psychopaths that are listening. I think that's kind of a bitter pill, but like it makes sense to me. Like we can kind of just fall into this idea that we want a perfectly happy life, but this is like Dostoevsky was all over this, right? I think in the Notes from Underground. Have you ever read that?
Love Notes from Underground.
Yeah.
Listener, if you are incel adjacent, read Notes from Underground. It will feel very familiar.
Yeah. Well, also, it's one of the best Dostoevsky and probably one of the shortest books as well.
You can sit and just do one sitting and read through the whole thing. It's great.
But there's some line about like, if all man had to do is sit around and eat cakes and make jokes, then he would quickly like destroy it, something about like, if there wasn't like natural strife, man would create it.
Right.
I guess it makes sense. And then, Seth will drop line or hints, and actually get it to it explicitly eventually, but they're like, our lives are like challenges. We're like setting up challenges according to him when we're taking lives.
Right.
It's interesting. Illness is often the result of ignorance and lazy mental habits. Such a discipline may be adopted, however, by certain personalities who must take strong measures with themselves because of other characteristics.
I love that one.
Yeah?
It's so like to the point. Illness is often the result of ignorance and lazy mental habits.
I guess the hopeful part of that is that like there's a clear path out of it, maybe if you're suffering an illness. There's a lot more to like, especially like minor illness that Seth will get into, I think, in this book. I'm not exactly sure.
But I think there's a hopefulness in that one too. Like I think that one's like 100% true because he says often, right? So often can mean like not all, but like I think often illness is the result of just being lazy, right? Like or just being ignorant, right? Like, oh wow, why do I always have a headache? Why do I always feel like shit? And you're just like only eating like the worst kinds of food, and you don't drink water, and like you never move your body, and it's like you sit on your phone for 5 hours a day. It's like, I wonder why I feel like shit.
You ask yourself that question and wow, there's the answers.
Yeah.
This makes me think of like how these qualifier words are so often lacking in like all of our spiritual texts. You're never like reading the Bible like often this happens or like
Maybe.
this not necessarily, it's like those parts aren't in there.
If your eyes offend you, pluck them out. But like only if they offend you in certain ways that I'm not going to go into specifically.
We'll just leave that part out. That's funny. You guys got any more on this?
I think Seth talked about generational purposes or something in one of these, but we talked about that last time, I feel like.
Before that, I got one more here on the bottom of 180. The point I want to make is that the opportunity for development and knowledge is as present at this moment in this life as it will ever be. This kind of gets to the laziness and ignorance. If you ignore day-by-day opportunities for development now, no one can force you to accept and utilize greater abilities after death or between lives. The teachers are there in after-death experience, but there are also teachers here in your existence now. It made me think of like how extreme Buddhism takes this, like we're trapped in this life cycle and you have to like, you'll be stuck here forever if you don't, work the system and find your way out. That there's like a kernel of truth in that like if you ignore your day-to-day opportunities for development now, no one can force you to accept or utilize greater abilities after death. Like it's kind of the same concept, but just distorted and taken to an extreme.
What do you mean?
Well, Seth implies that once you choose to enter the physical development line, that you have to finish it.
Yeah.
And so like if you're choosing to ignore your opportunities for development that are as present now as there ever will be in the future or have been, then you could kind of be stuck here for a while.
But it's like a really pessimistic take on it. That's like electing to go to university and being like, damn, I can't get my freaking degree unless I take all these classes that they required of me. Like this university is keeping me down, or you chose it and you knew this going in. You're not trapped here.
Yeah, it's the total extreme, right?
Yeah.
It's like that lack of qualifiers to the nth degree.
Yeah, I feel like that was a really pessimistic way of looking at this paragraph too.
No, I'm not interpreting that way. I'm constantly trying to understand like how, because when I've heard those things in the past, like something rang true to me. And then it's only when I get this more detailed picture of these same ideas that rings even more true. And I ask myself like, well, how did we get there? How did we get to these extreme distorted versions of these ideas? And I want to give people credit that there is a kernel of something there that resonates. That's why it's such a phenomenon. Like I feel like if there was nothing behind it, behind the distortion, they wouldn't be so popular necessarily.
Same thing with karma, but people believe karma is like imposed on you, as opposed to you die, you realize you were a selfish, sexist prick, and you're like, okay, I have to learn my lesson. I'm gonna take the elective where I am the sex that I victimized, where I have to learn not to be selfish. But it's not like any external governing body is forcing you to suffer in that other life. It's not, that's the distortion of karma that I wish more people knew.
That's partly how I got so into Buddhism too, is that it closely related to like the cause and effect of like scientific materialism. Like because they're not giving you the option to choose, even though you know better. Like you still have to like do the work. You're like tied to this machine. I mean, they even use terms like wheel is like one of the big metaphors they use. So you can see like how, one set of ideas that we carried, and according to Seth, and I think I agree, that are just like beliefs, bring you into another, and you're just like, changes everything. Your whole attitude can carry you in this way.
I guess I'll read this differently. I'm just going to read it over.
Yeah.
For the benefit of the listener.
Read it all the way as we can.
Because I think it's like actually a really inspiring passage, right? It says, the point I want to make is that the opportunity for development and knowledge is as present at this moment in this life as it will ever be. If you ignore day-to-day opportunities for development now, no one can force you to accept and utilize greater abilities after death, right? So it's like, to me, it like invokes this idea of like this existential starting line that I think like needs to be acknowledged when you want to do something like meaningful with your life, right? Where you have to realize like you're always there, you're always at the starting line. You need to make the first step, you know? And it's not like there's any other thing that can tell you to do it. You just have to take the initiative and just do it. You know, like it's your life. You can make it however you want to. You need to figure out what's meaningful. You need to choose what to do. And you do it now here in your physical existence currently, right? Like the lessons you learn now from people around you that you know, right? Like you're not waiting for someone else to come save you. You know, it's on you kind of thing.
Don't get me wrong, I totally share your view. I think it's because I've like read it before and I'm like thinking how this reflects on other layers of our society.
Yeah.
But I actually like had a moment in my life where this idea kind of like dawned on me. When I was in high school, I was thinking about like going into computer programming just because I kind of liked it, but I didn't. My idea for going into it was that I could just make a lot of money. And like, I thought maybe I can retire in like 10 years. I'll just rake it in.
Good job that you dodged that.
And then I was like, what am I going to do then? And then, you know, I came up with various things, but I concluded like, well, I should just do that thing now because that's what I want to do.
Right.
And I think that was the right choice.
Yeah.
And I think that's this sort of thing is like the moment is now to choose
what you want. Right. No, that's so true that like people will like, they'll put off the thing that they really think matters in life because they think they have to do some other step first.
Oh, I see this all the time with my work. I don't know if I've brought this up before, but like we have this unique retirement situation where like your retirement is based on like the 5 consecutive years that you gross the most money. So you can just like, some people just choose to do as much overtime as possible and they just live at work for 5 years. And sometimes it goes beyond 5 years because then they're like, well, I got a raise now. So like if I keep this going, it'll be even higher. And I feel like all of them have this idea of like, they're putting off this moment where they're going to choose what they want, where they're going to enjoy, where they're going to live their life. And some of them literally like don't live more than a few years after they retire.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them have like just basically killed that inner desire for whatever they actually wanted to do. And they retire and they don't know what to do with themselves. Like I have all this money and all this time and literally have like, this is all I feel like I'm wanting every day. I just want, you know, enough money and way more time.
Literally.
Yeah.
Listener, remember, you can die at any time. You could die tomorrow. Like, would you be able to look at what you're doing right now and be like, I'm okay dying tomorrow? If not, think about it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
The marshmallow experiment is bullshit. Just eat the goddamn marshmallow. You want the marshmallow? Eat the goddamn marshmallow. That's it.
I don't know. I'll push back a little bit on that, but
nah,
it's complete bullshit.
Which kid is cooler? Which kid do you want to be friends with? The
You
kid
were
that
just
eats the
talking
marshmallow?
about illness and fitness and being on your phone for 5 hours a day, but eating.
Nobody actually wants to be on their phone for 5 hours a day. They're addicted. Like addictions are things that you do even though you don't want to do them. If you are enjoying your addiction, more power to you. I'm not going to yuck your yum. I just want you to take a moment to think about your addiction and say, is this really what I want?
But what if you're addicted to marshmallows, Joe?
Then eat the marshmallows. You can't not. You're addicted.
I'm going to say there's a spectrum between the person that eats the marshmallow right away and the person that never eats it. You know, you can find your spot in between there. You can float around in there.
Wildfires are coming to your town. Don't buy a house. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I wanted to add there because I kind of implied that there's not enough time, and Seth is constantly saying like, you have all the time you need actually. And that's something that took me a long time to try to, you know, wrap my mind around and swallow. But we have a development of time, but like, this is why that question is important. Like, what do you want to do? And like, do it now. It's not because there's no time, but it's because there's all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's kind of crazy when I say it out loud. But you should do what you want to do because you have all the time. Why would you put it off?
It's one of the hardest questions to answer. Like, I'm not pretending like it's easy. Like, sitting and thinking, like, what does a good life look like for me? Like, what is my version of a good life is one of the hardest questions to actually answer. So, like, I'm not pretending this is easy. Like, but that's why you need to think about it, you know?
It means you're digging into some deep layers, I think. And just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's not meaningful.
Right, like in trying to answer the question, you come to know so much more about yourself and about life.
Yeah.
Right.
Seth must get into value fulfillment at some point in this book in a more direct way, does he? Or
I don't actually remember, but he definitely touches upon it a lot in the magical approach.
those ideas will relate a lot to what we're talking about now. I think it's one of his greatest ideas, and like all of them, they're like simple at some level, but
I'm just hoping we talked about it enough to help somebody get through their hard, like, part of their gym set. Just someone yelling in the mic to you about, like, do it today, do it now.
I'll have some Seth in my ears at the gym often. I don't know if it helps me push through, but that's our show. But fear not, the never-ending conversation continues next week. If you're enjoying the show, please be so kind as to subscribe, like, rate, and review. And if you're feeling frisky, tell a friend. Contact us at implicatingthereal@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/implicatingthereal. We are doing our best, but whatever support you can lend helps us appreciably. We are not affiliated with the publishers or proprietors, but we encourage you to get the books. You can follow along as we endeavor to dive deep into the Sethian worldview, and there's really nothing like cultivating your own relationship with the material. Until next week, we wish you a fun good evening.